In this video, I'm going to review the AstrHori 28mm f13 macro probe lens, and I'm going to compare it to the Laowa 24mm f14 probe lens. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Use coupon code CARL to get a 10% discount. So for our first test, we've got the probe lens mounted on the Rhino Slider, and we've pre-programmed in a start point and an end point. And at the moment, it's just running backwards and forwards on a loop on that start point and end point. And you can see the result of that we've got over on the television at the moment. So it just pulls out from the donut, comes back, the extreme wide angle, great depth of field because of the narrow aperture of the probe lens. Here it is going through it again. So what we're going to do is we're going to do these tests with both probe lenses and compare the results of each one on several scenarios with the same sequence on each probe lens. Here we have both lenses with a standard LUT and a little additional grade. You can see that the AstrHori lens is a little bit lower contrast and it seems to suffer flare more than the Laowa lens when light is shining directly into it. Here we have both lenses in S-Log3 with a standard LUT only. Again, this further exaggerates the difference between the two lenses and the lower contrast on the AstrHori when it has direct light shining into the lens, causing flare. As you may have noticed, you can easily recognise the difference in focal length between the 28mm and the wider view provided on the 24mm Laowa. So we tested both probe lenses again, this time in particular the little LED fill light on the end of the probe, and you can see there the effect that it's having. We've turned it down, but in our clip you'll also see how we're using it just as a gentle shadow fill, and that's with the intensity of the exposure turned right down. We've compared both lenses going in and out of the bag of coffee beans, and interestingly, again, as on our first test, the AstrHori lens is slightly on the bluer side compared to the other lens, but this time the image looked a lot cleaner and a lot better on the contrast. So it seems comparison wise there seems to be more effect from flare when you're lighting into this lens than there does on the other lens. But if you're not lighting directly into the lens, as we're not in this setup, then flare hasn't seemed to be as much of a problem, and contrast and optical quality seems equal, just color balance seems a little bit different. In this sequence, the AstrHori performed really well. We weren't using lighting coming directly into the lens and it didn't suffer flare, contrast looked good. However, the lens tended to look bluer than the Laowa lens, which was more neutral. In this comparison, you can see both lenses performed well. However, the AstrHori lens seems to run a little bit on the blue side compared to the Laowa. Here we're turning the LED lights on the end of the lens on and off manually, just to show you the effect that can be used to fill in the shadows. So for this test, I wanted to test both probe lenses at maximum aperture and minimum aperture to see how the optical quality performed, and also to compare the depth of field. Now the depth of field will look slightly different anyway, because the Laowa lens, if that's how you pronounce it, is a 24mm and the AstrHori lens is a 28mm. Now, maximum aperture on the AstrHori lens is f13, but it's f14 maximum aperture on this. But both lenses close down to f40 to maximize that depth of field. So we ran f40 and maximum aperture, and you can see the setup that we've got running here. It's just the probe lens coming across a book that gives us a nice bunch of writing that we can look at and see what's legible based on the depth of field tests, and that will also give us an opportunity to look at that optical quality on each lens. Here are both lenses at f40, their minimum aperture, and they perform very well, although the Laowa seems sharper across the area of the image. Here are both lenses at their maximum aperture, and in this instance the AstrHori seems to suffer aberrations and problem in the corner of the image. However, the additional shallow depth of field look that this provides might be preferable for some videographers. Okay, so we had a lot of fun on that one, 240 frames per second slow-mo on the milk pour. If you want to watch the full class on that, how we did it, the lighting, the settings, the camera and everything, the techniques, check that out on Carl Taylor Education in our filmmaking section in due course. Now, for this particular YouTube review of the AstrHori 28mm f13 against the Laowa f14 24mm, you've seen the results. We think the Laowa has performed slightly better, contrast, color balance to the lens a little bit better, and also better performing in backlighting situations, less flare in that lens than we were seeing in this AstrHori. It may be that also the AstrHori's got a slightly wider diameter probe part to it, which did cause a tiny bit of problems on the donut hole, in that we had to widen the hole on the donut slightly because of the wider probe. Both perform well with the LEDs on the end, allowing you to illuminate into dark corners like we did on the coffee shot test. Overall though, not a bad result from this probe lens, given that it is more than half the price of the Laowa. The Laowa, I think, is coming in at around about £1,800, or sorry, £1,700, $1,800. And this one is coming in around about $700. And you know, that is a considerable saving, given that the minor optical quality differences are rather minor. This one, as I said, runs a little bit bluer, contrast not quite as good, and obviously the larger diameter on there, but overall a pretty good performing lens, especially for the price. Now, as you've seen from these demos, you can now understand what probe lenses are used for. We would primarily use them for video, but you can use them for stills as well. It allows you to get a camera into unusual places, places that a normal lens can't go, allows you to reach into those places. It also gives you a very unique perspective from a very sort of tiny person in a big giant world with a wide angle view, and of course that extra depth of field that you get from these probe lenses that you wouldn't get from a conventional lens.
Welcome to Donut World, where the donuts dunk you. Tarantino coffee, the fullest bodied, darkest roasted, oldest age coffee north of the equator. Guernsey milk looks so good in slow-mo, you'll want it to splash all over the table. This winter, stop watching YouTube videos, open up a novel, and let the stories come to life.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Carl to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.